Now, who the fuck, when they have an exteriorly accessible blade, would open the freaking tool, reach inside, open the box cutter in order to get this shitty little like knife with a hook at the tip in order to open a box? Like, come on, I have this right here. I don't need to open anything, and I'm just gonna open a box with a freaking knife. Like, who the hell thought it was gonna be a good idea to waste one spot for a tool and put a freaking box cutter interiorly in a knife that has an exteriorly accessible knife? What the fuck? Hi everyone, this is Ori from Brutally Honest Reviews, and today I'm coming at you with a new review about this little Leatherman tool. It's called a Leatherman Wingman, and it's a relatively small tool. I think it's considered in their mid-sized tools, and I really like it. That's why I'm doing a review of it. I actually picked it up from REI. I just got it the other day, and I did a bunch of research like I always do before purchasing it, about which Leatherman would be most suited for me. And then obviously like the immediate conclusion when you start doing research about Leathermans is that the Leatherman Wave Plus is the go-to. And I haven't properly had a Wave Plus, but I've handled Wave Pluses, because I'm from Israel, and the Israel military gives all their combat. It's very common to get like a Leatherman Wave to their combat soldiers, and I wasn't a combat soldier, but my three little brothers were, so we had Leatherman Waves floating around, and I never really. This was kind of like in my previous life, and I never really got onto tools or using them, and definitely not Leathermans. The maximum I would have like a little Victorinox, like kind of like pocket knife, but now in my current life, I've been carrying like a little switchblade with a bit driver. And it's been super useful. It's amazing. It's like just a Milwaukee tool switchblade, which is super cool. But I was like, okay, I've been doing all this manual labor and tool labor and like all this stuff. I was like, it's time to get a Leatherman. And when I started researching them, like I said, the immediate conclusion is just to get a Leatherman Wave. But the Leatherman Wave, and I've actually held it before, and it's a little bit too heavy. So it's kind of like something that, yeah, it's awesome because it has a ton of tools. But first of all, do I even need all these tools, or do you, or does anyone? And then when I say, do I need all these tools? I mean, first of all, yes, I need all the freaking tools in the world. But the question is, do I need all these tools in my multi-tool? And that's a different question, because I'm not going to put power tools. I mean, this is obviously like a dumb example and an extreme, but I'm not going to put like power tools in my Leatherman, right? So like there's a time and a place for every tool. And there's a time and a place for a multi-tool, and there's a time and a place for like a dedicated proper tool which has a specific purpose, whether it's a plier or a wire cutter or a drill or an impact driver, whatever it is, or a freaking table saw or like a freaking hydraulic press. Like there are time and places for every tool. And so do I need, or does anyone need all these tools? Yes, I need them all, but I don't need them all on my multi-tool. So like which tools you decide to put on your multi-tool is an important question, because a multi-tool needs to be carryable and small. I mean, the smaller and lighter it is, the better. And then how small and how light you want to go, and how much and how heavy you're willing to carry as a trade-off in order to have that functionality is like, that's a trade-off, right? Of course. So yeah, definitely more tools is better, but more tools is better in my shed or in the storage of my bus, not necessarily in my pocket. So I did some research, and I found actually a cool review comparing the Wingman and the Wave Plus. And then I wanted to add some details on my own, because I do brutally honest reviews. I don't do just regular reviews. So I'm really going to talk about the advantages relative to the Wave, but also I'm going to talk about the disadvantages overall, like both relative to the Waves and generally. So like on a dry, just like buy the specs, and you can get the specs on the Leatherman website. This has 14 tools versus the Wave Plus, which has 18 tools. And then this weighs 7 ounces, which is just about 200 grams, 190 grams, 198. And then the Leatherman Wave Plus weighs 8.5 ounces or 241 grams. And when I saw those numbers, I was like 41, I don't know much about ounces, but I was like 41 grams, that's not very much. Like 100 grams is like 100 grams bar of chocolate. So 41 grams lighter is only like half a bar of chocolate lighter. But actually, when you think about it, it's like it's 1/4 more of the weight of this. So if this is 200 grams, 240, it's not really 1/4, it's a fifth. So it's 1/5 more weight. But honestly, just the way these feel in the hand, like this feels significantly smaller. And then just the dry specs. So that's a significant advantage, because the Wave is heavy. It's too big. It pulls your pants down when you put it in your pocket, unless you have a belt, and I'm not a belt wearing guy. And if you put it in like a little pouch or it weighs it down, like you feel it significantly. So I was really looking for something lighter. And then then it obviously has the disadvantage of that it's slightly smaller. So the Wingman is 3.8 inches closed versus the Wave, which is 4 inches closed. So it's 0.2 inches. It's not a big difference in the size, in like the actual size and how it fits in the hands. Although yeah, 0.2 inches. It sounds small, but it's big. Like it's a big difference. Like this is totally encapsulated in my hand, whereas a Wave, would definitely like, I don't know if it would stick out. It just feels more massive. It's also thicker, I think, because it has, so this has only 2 externally accessible tools, whereas the Wave has 4. But other than just the size and weight advantages relative to the Wave, this also has 3 other advantages. So first of all, when you open this, and this is the most significant advantage, this has spring action pliers. So like they immediately, as soon as you open it, like the pliers open, whereas the Wave, the pliers always kind of like get stuck and they're like a hassle to open. Like they're not super comfortable to use. So I would definitely say these pliers are way more comfortable to use. And I'm not going to go into like the nose shape or the needle nose or the regular pliers. Like that's whatever. They make this shape so that it can fit in the housing of whatever other tools they put here. So they both have needle nose pliers and they're both pretty fine. And then obviously this isn't a replacement for all other pliers. Like there are cases where you need specific pliers, and then you're just going to pull out your Milwaukee tool and not use the Leatherman for that. So the first advantage is the spring action pliers. The other advantage is that this has externally accessible scissors. And these scissors are actually really good. They're pretty big, they're not small, and they're pretty robust. So and scissors are honestly, other than the knife and maybe the screwdriver, the scissors are the most used tools, and both the externally accessible tools have like this Leatherman locking mechanism. It's pretty common. You just push here and that. They all have that. So this has externally accessible scissors, which is I think another advantage relative to the Leatherman Wave. And I'm not going to go into the advantages of the Leatherman Wave relative to this one, because like the Leatherman Wave just has more tools, including 2 knives, which is the main advantage as far as I'm concerned, because it's useful to have a serrated and a other knife and flat knife. So yeah, like the Wave has some various advantages, but you have to decide whether or not you want to pay the price. The Wave also has like a saw and some other tools. And honestly, like a saw at first may sound like it's useful, but a saw this size, even a manual big saw, it's a big pain in the ass to use. It's like really, really hard to saw. Just get out an electric tool. And like seriously, like no one manually saws these days. So like that's just like added weight you're going to be carrying around and not ever use. So those are like, again, the Wave Plus has the advantages of more tools, but the disadvantage of the added weight, which is just carrying tools that you're most likely never going to use. Anyways, first advantage of this relative to the Wave, other than the weight, is the spring action pliers. The second advantage is externally accessible scissors. And the third advantage is, and this is just a small one, but it's significant, is it has this little belt clip. And I think you may be able to buy like a $20 additional belt clip for the Leatherman Wave, which is going to make it more bulky and more heavy and cost another $20, which is a fucking expensive belt clip. This one comes with it built in. And this belt clip is honestly, like, it sounds like a small deal, but it's awesome because, first of all, if you put it in your pocket, like, yeah, you can put it in your pocket and just clip it, and then it's always like accessible at the top of your pocket rather than like digging into your pocket and trying to figure out where it is. So that's the first reason that it's useful to have the clip. But the other reason is that if your pocket is full of like, I don't know, a phone or something, and you just need a temporary place to stash this, you can just put it like on your pants from the outside, and then you don't need that big bulky. And it comes with a nylon sheath, but you don't need, when you have this like clip, you don't need that big bulky ass nylon sheath. And if you put it in the back, kind of like, this doesn't even go in your back pocket, so you can sit down with this and it's no problem. You don't feel it. There is some type of danger that it could like fall off and you lose it. So I wouldn't always carry it kind of like this in the back or in the front. In the front, it's kind of like less practical because that's where your hip bends. So it's not going to be super comfortable to put it in the front. But yeah, this belt clip, it sounds like a small deal, but when you're using this knife as everyday carry, the belt clip is nice. So those are all the reasons I really do like this multi-tool. But like I said, this is a brutally honest review. It's not a regular review. And I'm going to talk about the disadvantages of this. And honestly, like, these are just like design flaws, like stupid things that I don't understand why Leatherman, like, who thought of these and why do they continue doing it? So first of all, there's only one blade, and only one blade isn't a huge deal if every other tool in this multi-tool is useful. But they made a couple of like really stupid decisions. So the first one and most obvious is an interiorly accessible box cutter. Now, who the fuck, when they have an exteriorly accessible blade, would open the freaking tool, reach inside, open the box cutter in order to get this shitty little like knife with a hook at the tip in order to open a box? Like, come on, I have this right here. I don't need to open anything, and I'm just gonna open a box with a freaking knife. Like, who the hell thought it was gonna be a good idea to waste one spot for a tool and put a freaking box cutter interiorly in a knife that has an exteriorly accessible knife? What the fuck? I mean, I would rather just delete this tool completely and save the weight of it, or put a more useful tool than this. Like, come on, you could put a secondary, like, smaller knife in here, and then you could have it, and that would be more useful than a freaking box cutter? Seriously? Like, the only usable part of this tool is this little tip, whereas a knife would have at least, and it would be a small knife for sure, it would only be useful for certain things, but at least the whole thing would be useful. And then you could say, okay, fine, but they're putting a box cutter so that you can do other stuff as well, but they didn't put any other tools on this knife, on this box cutter. So what the hell? So that's one stupid thing. And then the other bad design decision that they made is with the Phillips screwdriver. So they did put a Phillips screwdriver, but they didn't put their classic one, which has like a little bit that you can take in and out. And on the one side it has a Phillips, on the other side it has a flat, which is a pretty good screwdriver. This Phillips screwdriver is pretty flat, and that's why they put it to kind of like save space and weight. But honestly, like a PH2 is the bit of a Phillips screwdriver, like the most commonly used one. And this doesn't feel to me like a PH2. It feels slightly less snug in most of the screws that I do up, which is a bummer because like a Phillips bit driver is really like one of my most commonly used tools. So it's a bit of a bummer. It's not horrible. This Phillips screwdriver works. It's better than just sticking in a flathead screwdriver into a Phillips screw and trying to get it to torque. This does works, but I would definitely prefer like, for example, if they would get rid of the previous box cutter that I talked about and then give me some more added width, then they could put in their normal usual Phillips bit driver, which would have a flat end on the other side, so it would be gaining space and not need to put this additional flathead screwdriver on the tool. So yeah, that's a bummer. It's not a deal breaker, and this Phillips screwdriver still works. And then this flathead screwdriver, it's a pretty wide one. Let me just get that. Yeah, so you can see it here. It's pretty wide. It's not very sharp, so you can't use it for any like prying anything open really, or like a pry bar, unless it has a pretty flat. This is not sharp at all. So that's the second bummer kind of about this tool. The third bummer, and this is also just like it's like a weird design decision. Like they decided to put, so a bottle opener is great. It's useful. It's a bottle opener and also a can opener, so that's cool. I definitely like that. But they decided to put a file. And like, granted, this isn't just a file. It has like a smaller flathead screwdriver in the tip, and this has a slightly sharper tip. And then on the back, they put in like a ruler. So whoop-de-doo, I can measure 1 inch of distance. But yeah, like a file is just like a really weird, it's not a very often, I've never used a file. I can't see using a file, but this is another like potential place where it would be, they could have put like a secondary blade, and it would be a small one. Like I said, like, okay, yeah, you have a small secondary blade, but at least you have a secondary blade. So you could use, let's say, one for food and one for like outdoors or cutting or like whatever it is you want to do it. So like, yeah, they decided to put like two weird tools, which are really unnecessary in a multi-tool, which is the box cutter and this file, which is honestly, it's like a nail file, but who the hell files their nails? Like, cut them, just clip them, or like bite them, or I don't know, a nail file, seriously? And I can't see anyone using this to file metal. Like this has a 1 inch file space of like friction space, and it's not even very frictiony, and it's on an angle. Anyways, like, can you see someone like filing the burrs of a freshly cut piece of metal? No. If you're cutting a piece of metal, you don't just have your multi-tool on you. You have also a metal file and probably a cutoff disc and a grinder and everything else you need to properly do whatever it is you need to do. Like, in what emergency everyday carry situation do you need to use a file? And that's basically all I have to say. So I'm just gonna, so honestly, like, I would rather, like, honestly, if I could get this tool without these two additional tools, and just save the weight and size and heft of those additional tools, that would even be a better tool as far as I'm concerned. Although you're kind of like losing out on having 14 tools, you would only have 12 tools. But I don't give a fuck. I don't want to carry around extra weight and stuff that I'm never going to be using, especially on like a multi-tool, which is a tool that you buy because you want to use it often. So I would much rather, on the trade-off of having more useless tools or having a smaller tool which has less tools but also less weight, I would much rather have less weight. But honestly, what I would prefer, this size and weight is a pretty comfortable size and weight for me. Like, I don't really need it to be smaller. So I would much prefer if Leatherman could kind of get their act together and think about the use case of what people are doing when they're using these knives, and get rid of the box cutter, get rid of a nail file or a metal file or whatever it is, and put more useful tools. And the main one that I can recommend, honestly, is a secondary knife, a secondary blade, and then you could have one flat blade and one serrated blade. You could maybe make the serrated blade the short one, and then the flat blade the longer one, and then also free up the space and then just put your normal bit driver, like your Phillips and flathead bit driver, reversible side bit driver, put that and make this tool freaking amazing and all of what it could be. Like, this tool is great. It's pretty cool. And I love that it has like this externally accessible scissor and knife, but just small tweaks could make this tool so much better. And like I said, I'm still going to keep this tool. I'm going to carry it in my pouch or in my pocket, and definitely in my pocket when I'm doing like any type of work. And like, it's funny, I said, like, when I'm doing any type of work, I have all the rest of my tools on me as well. But like, there are situations where kind of like you don't have something like immediately in your hand and you're all crouched over holding something. So if you can just like whip out your Leatherman and get it done. That's my use case for this when I'm doing like work. I don't know if it's like electrical work, I need to like strip off a piece of wire or something like that. So yeah, I'm still gonna keep this. I like this tool, and I think it's the best tool for me that Leatherman makes. It has this great trade-off of like size versus weight versus functionality. But there are a couple of things that I wish Leatherman would take into their consideration. And honestly, the best thing Leatherman could do is make a frame just about this size. And then you kind of like, with checkboxes, you select whichever tools you want. And then you could have a couple of, so like if you have a slot which is the size of, let's say, this box cutter, then they could have a selection of, let's say, 3 or 4 tools that you could choose from. And then they would kind of custom build the Leatherman tool, like the Leatherman Wingman custom or whatever they could call it. And then it would come, instead of with with a box cutter, it could come with one of a box cutter, a small serrated blade, or whatever. That would be awesome if Leatherman would do that. I know it's a little bit more of an investment, but I would gladly pay another $20 or even $50. Honestly, if I could get a freaking totally custom, this sized Leatherman tool, custom built, custom for my needs. And I'm not talking about custom built, like custom fabricated. I'm just talking about like custom built where I choose like out of three, let's say there are 2 tools that I find in here that are optional. So like it's always going to come with, let's say, a can opener, and a Phillips. And let's get rid of this Phillips screwdriver. Let's get rid of this. Yeah, so let's just get rid of, on this side, let's get rid of this Phillips and the flathead screwdriver. Just put in your regular bit driver, which has a reversible bit, which honestly, it would even be better if you could put in a 1/4 inch bit in here. I don't know if you can engineer the room to find that, but even if you can't, just put in your regular bit driver, which you have in the Leatherman Wave, which is awesome. It has one side flat, one side Phillips, and it would fit in the space of these 2 tools probably, so that would be fine for me. And then on the other side, you would have, so you have, like I said, you have the can opener / bottle opener, leave that. But then these 2 tools, you can choose to replace them with an option of 3 different tools. So you can choose 2 out of, let's say, 4 tools. So one would be a serrated blade, a box cutter, a file, and let's say a tiny saw, or I don't know, whatever it is, like an awl or a hook or something. Those would be things that would be more useful, at least to me. And honestly, they wouldn't even cost Leatherman anything because you would design other tools which are the same size and shape as these. And then just when you're putting them together, just before you screw in this last little like Torx nut to put it in, you just, instead of slipping in a nail file, you slip in a serrated blade, which is the exact same size. Or instead of slipping a box cutter, you slip in an awl. How cool would that be? Like, Leatherman, please, like, hear me out. I'm gonna send you this video. Hopefully you'll get it. So that would be like my dream. That would be perfect. So yeah, there's a review of the Leatherman Wingman. It's cool. If you like this review, I do other reviews on other gear, and I don't do regular reviews. I do brutally honest reviews. I have reviews on like sling bags, like backpacks, pouches, outdoor showers, like overlanding gear, van life gear, and I'm also building a bus. So I'm doing like build instructionals and stuff like that. Yeah, I was Ori, you were you. Thanks for watching. See you later.